that brings up an interesting point because, the emergence of assholes like me has really thrown a spanner in the works and a ton of confusion into like proper ways to train. It seemed like from an outsider's perspective, as a fan perspective, looking at 90s bodybuilding, that training styles of the top guys seemed more alike than different, where there didn't really seem to be much contention, or at the very least, no one cared to talk about the differences and people kind of focused on the similarities. Is that an accurate cross-section of like golden era bodybuilding, that if you were to go train with another golden era bodybuilder, likely that you guys would be more on the same wavelength, where one guy's not, well, I'm team full range of motion, or I'm high intensity, or I'm this, I'm that?
Well, listen, and I'm sure that you experienced, because, okay, you jumped in with me and Ben to train that hack squat, super slows, and all this kind of stuff, right? I mean, maybe something that you don't normally do, but these are kind of examples that I join whoever, and they're gonna, want me to experiment something that they do. But in general, I have athletes that don't even do the partial movement. Speaking of a full range of motion, this would be almost like critical. You would die laughing when you see what kind of range that is, right? For arms, for biceps, for triceps, and then he has a three times the size of my arms, right? And so now I'm supposed to tell him, hey, you're doing this wrong, right? It's just define all the logics. Then, even now there's who is I just watched the video. Yeah, there was Tony Pearson, I think. There was advertisement for his Driven book, which I got in a video, and he was doing side laterals for shoulders, like pretty much the worst possible way you can possibly do it, right? But hey, that's Tony Pearson. And then you look at Arnold. I'm sure that you see some Arnold exercises back in the day that you would probably cringe, right? But that's Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? So I learned all my lessons. Going with Ben Pakulski and doing execution would be masterful, right? And it don't move anything else. But then I've seen guys that, Jay Cutler, for biceps, he would move like like wind is blowing. Yeah. And so how can you possibly say, hey, no, this is not the right way? So I experimented in both ways. I like to isolate and feel it, but then I like to incorporate everything else. Example that I have, people ask me, Milos, if I do whatever for chest, and so be it, if I bring in my delts and bring in my triceps, but I can most definitely put a much bigger load on my chest, being in eccentric or concentric, whatever, whichever part, but I could do much more than if I'm just isolating and trying to shut off my connection with the delts and triceps. Wouldn't that be more stimulating? So like let's say I'm a chest and you're the delt, and now if I do it alone, I can only do 5, 100 pounds, for example. But then now when I'm doing it with you, and even though we're doing 900 and you're doing 300, but I'm able to do 600 now just with your assistance, and I can get more than normally I would just on the chest. I don't know if I'm even making sense in giving you.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah, because it's hard for me to explain that. Because I've seen this happen with many guys, right? I stabilize them, I don't let them move anything else, or I let them, have a little bit that free movement, and they had much better results the other way. So I stopped telling them, exactly. I can throw in advice, let them choose, and then watch them. But you know how it is when they switch back to what they normally did. I'm not gonna insist.
Yeah. How has your training evolved over the years? Like, how long have you been in the gym for?
Since September 18, 1981.
I love that you know the day.
I kid you not. I remember that very well. Because I don't know if you heard that story. First in Serbia, Yugoslavia back in the day, there's no bodybuilders walking around. There's no magazines that you can actually see that human body can be so muscular, right? So I was in judo at the time, and then I've seen a magazine. It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's just like I just got his book. Do you get his book? The 7 rules. What is it called? Be useful. Be useful. Yeah, yeah. 7 tools for life. I just got it yesterday. So what I was saying. So when I realized human body can actually look that way, right? This is when that's when I had a discussion with my father, and he said, "Oh, that's narcissistic." So what do you mean narcissistic? Man can be skinny, undeveloped, fat, out of shape, or muscular, right? What would man supposed to choose, right? So for me, discovery of, oh, this is actually possible, how it would be possible. And then I remember seeing this guy. He was Hungarian, living in Serbia, and I've seen him year before, and then I see him a year later, and it's like, holy, what are you doing? He says, I'm lifting weights. So that day, September 18, so I'm coming, where is your gym? He didn't have a gym, he had in a house, the concrete weight and all that stuff. So I just went straight. That day, we took pictures and everything else. And if you can imagine, zero idea of training. Like, you don't even know. Like, you go in, you don't know a single exercise. You don't know the single muscle. You don't know nothing, right? So, of course, first I was just following what he was doing. And then whatever I would do, and whichever, it was not mind muscle connection and squeezing the muscle. It was just like lifting the weights a certain way. So next day, you would be, no, next day, 2 days later, you would be like miserably sore. So you know to identify which muscle did the work. This is how I started, right? And also what is interesting, of course, right away you think, oh, I want this so bad, I want it quickly. So I trained like 3 hours a day, So of course, 3 months later, I was just still eating the same mama's diet, mama's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, whatever is served. So I got smaller.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so it's like, what the hell? So this is, how I started, of course. I'm sure that you, at your time, and where you started, you had already much more information. I had zero information. Zero experts around, zero magazines, zero, books, so that was completely, of course, trial and error.
So as that evolved, like I think one of the things that makes, I don't want to say bodybuilding easier because that's not the right way to word it, but I think a lot about, so Roger Bannister was the first guy to break a 4-minute mile. And the next weekend, like 4 guys ran a 4-minute mile. So it was thought to be this like insurmountable feat of physical endurance or speed or, just something that couldn't be done. It was like this mental block that the whole world had. But once he saw that he did it, everyone was like, oh, it can be done. And then it was done. Today with social media and like the popularity behind competing, growing, it's like, when I see someone, like when someone diets now, they know it can be done, right? They have a coach that has gone through it and go, yeah, I've been 4% body fat. It's going to suck. You're going to not be able to sleep. You're going to lose your sex drive. All these things. What was the experience like getting into the competitive field with no real Roger Bannister, like with not like the inundation of like, wow, everyone does this. I can do this.
Yeah. Well, now on that note, because you said you have a large experience with the Serbians. Nobody in Serbia had achieved anything in bodybuilding, really, right? So, as soon as I got into this, I decided I'm going to be Mr. Universe. This was my goal. Of course, at that time, I didn't even know of Mr. Olympia. I mean, there was like, what is the difference, federations and all that stuff. But one thing immediately that I once I've seen Arnold's picture in the magazine, and then Frank Zane and everybody else, Sergeant Bray. Frank Zane became my idol. I took his poster and put it in my room. You know, that 1977 Mr. Olympia with his classic pose, you know, in that purple trunks. I visualized myself in an image very close to him, right? Symmetrical, aesthetic physique and all that stuff. And I just said, okay, I'm gonna, you know, create that kind of physique. I announced it in my country, right? I'm going to America. I'm going to compete with Mr. Olympia, right? It was zero doubt in my mind. I don't know if you also heard that, but I had this kind of. I lost my journals. I was writing journals. Every single gram of protein, carbs, fat, everything that I do, every rep, in a calculation. By the end of the day, it would be 500 grams of protein, so much carbs, so much fat, so many calories, and check, good day, good day. So 1987, I'm sorry, 87, I put on one of those 5-year plan. I'm going to come to America, win Miss Universe, qualify for Mr. Olympia, and make a living off of bodybuilding. I came in 87 in October for Mr. Universe. I won Universe 89. I turned professional 91. I got the Weider contract February 92. And I qualified for Olympia in the first year. And I promise you, I mean, even now when I'm thinking like, why would I be certain that this is going to happen? I was certain. I didn't speak English. You know the story. I had a $428.10 to my name, you know, and I came here to make a living, you know, spend all the money right away. So like part of my diet was starvation. I didn't have any food, you know, to eat. That's how I was keeping it lean. You know, in general, I had that vision that I'm going to do that. Why? Don't ask me. I mean, really, even right now, it boggles my mind. Why was I so certain that I could do it? But one thing that I got from my dad, right, is I'm not inferior or superior to anyone. You have all flesh and blood, and with the right information and right hard work, you can achieve anything. I'm sure that this is how Novak Djokovic was thinking the same thing. You've seen him, 7, 8 years old kid, saying, you know, his goal is to win Wimbledon, right? You would be laughing stock of the nation. And I was, back in the day when I was leaving Serbia, and I was saying I'm going to win, you know, Mr. Universe, I'm going to go on Mr. Olympia. I mean, people making jokes about it. But why not? You know, you just tell me, right? Why not? So, of course, when I started competing, my first contest, I didn't expect to qualify for Olympia. And I qualified right away. So the things were happening much faster for me than I was even expecting.